All right, guys, what's the most attractive thing about dads?
What's that?
I know. Dad jokes.
Correct. All right, I've got a joke for you. Husband, I haven't spoken to my wife in 18 months. Friend, why not? Husband, I don't like to interrupt her.
Do you ever wonder, why do I always seem to give so much more than I get? All I want is to be appreciated and loved. Is that asking too much? Why do all the jerks get the hot girls while I get stuck in the friend zone? When will it ever be my turn? If this sounds like you, you're in the right place. Welcome to The Nice Guy Show. This is the podcast that asks the question, how do I break free from the nice guy syndrome so I never have to come in last again? Now here are your hosts, Faisal Coker and Chuck Chapman.
Hey guys, welcome to the Nice Guy Show. This is podcast episode number 16, and today we're going to talk about no more Mr. Nice Dad. If you're a dad and you're a nice guy, then you're probably a nice dad. So today I'm here with my co-host, Faisal Coker, and we've got a special guest. Faisal, you want to introduce our guest?
Yes, we have. We've got an awesome guy, awesome friend, and a coach and a psychologist as well. We've got Ari. Ari, welcome to the Nice Guy Show. I'm looking forward to having your ideas and concepts and, you as a dad himself, what you've got to say about being a nice dad. So let's get this going.
Yeah, I'm Ari Graff. I'm a nice guy coach. That's how I know Faisal and Chuck. And I'm a psychologist. And my story is I was married for about 8 years, and I had a young son. He was about 2 years old when we got divorced, and that was like the roughest time for me. And that was how I discovered men's coaching, and that's how I started to figure out some of my stuff as a parent.
Ari, I can so relate to that. When I was going through my breakup, my younger son was about 2 years old, and my older son was nearly 6. So, as a dad, I think it's one of the most troubling times, the most hardest times when our kids are really young, and then we've got to grapple through. We've got to, deal with a breakup as well. Chuck, what about you? I know you're a recovering nice guy as well, and a dad.
No, and I think my experience is a little bit different than a lot of guys because I have a daughter who has special needs. But I remember when my wife and I divorced, like that was such a difficult time. Totally relate to what you're talking about, Ari, because I was reeling inside, and yet I still had to take care of her. And I remember there's this one time. It was Christmas. It's right around Christmas time, and I'm in this little apartment, and she's with me for the weekend. And she brought over her shoebox of her Christmas ornaments, and I was so depressed that I was having a really hard time engaging with her. So I didn't even have a Christmas tree or anything. And she said, "Dad, come here, take a look." And she had taken all of her ornaments and she had like placed them different places around my little apartment. And I just broke inside, because she was trying to make me happy. And I think that was probably one of the most difficult times of my life as well. And I think you guys probably relate to that, where you're reeling inside and yet you still have to show up and be a dad.
I really felt that one. That's hard. That's tough. And, I'm sure, all of us have got some stories where, you realize you're going through a breakup, you're going through that turmoil, and yet you discover more about yourself. And then you've got to be the support system for your kids, and your kids are looking at you while you're going through this real low. And I remember this going through my rock bottom myself. And it was hard. It was really, really hard. I remember the day when the divorce, when, she said to me, she's leaving, and I just collapsed to the ground. And it was so painful. And it wasn't painful just because our relationship was ending. It's the fact that the whole family unit, it was like, kids used to work from home. I used to work from home. Well, kids didn't work from home, but I did. But when I used to work from home, and that was the thing when I realized they're no longer going to be in my life every day. And that was so difficult to experience and go through.
Yeah,
Yeah,
me
for
too.
sure.
That was the thing I was trying to avoid the most, was breaking up the family. Like that was a harder possibility for me than actually getting divorced. It was being separated from my son half the time. I mean, I assumed at that point it would be fifty
Right.
fifty, but even that just felt like such a loss. It is still a loss, but you can still have a rich relationship with your son, even like that.
I think
Yeah,
it's probably a lot.
I mean, rationally, yeah, I was going to say, even rationally, that you might know it might be 50-50, but it's still, I think the pain, you can tell the heart that, it's going to be 50-50, but the pain was too much.
I don't know about you guys, but like when I'm FaceTiming with my son, he still does this, but he a lot of the time he won't want to talk to me. So that started, once we separated. I mean, and he does that to my ex also. So it isn't just to me, but he'll say, "I don't want to talk to you." So I've got like maybe 30 seconds to see his face,
Yeah.
Mm.
on a day that I don't have him, and he doesn't even want to talk to me. And what do you do with that? And even though
Yeah.
I knew that was part of how he's dealing with the split, um, there's not an easy fix for that.
You know. And I think there's a lot of nice guys out there maybe listening to this podcast who are divorced or going through a divorce and have children and trying to be a dad, and they could probably really relate to our stories, um, because I think there's a common thread here. That common thread of the loss, not that it's not just loss of the relationship, it's the loss of the dream. It's the loss of the idea of I'm going to have I'm going to my family is is going to stay together, no matter what. And I think that was one of the hardest things for me, was also was the idea of like my it wasn't so much the divorce of the marriage, it was the idea of like I'm losing my family, this thing that I've been trying to hold together. So maybe what we could do is we can talk about some of the things that we've learned as dads going through divorce, what it's like to parent children when you're going through that, when you are like struggling to just stay above water. What do you do? How do you maintain that dadness? How do you maintain being a father and being, um, you know, in the moment with your kids when your life is falling apart?
I like that term, the dadness. That would be a good podcast name
Yeah,
too.
the
But
dadness.
it's sort of like the how do you maintain the essence of dad,
Yeah, yeah.
and that dad spirit at a
Mm-hmm.
time when you feel defeated or demoralized,
Mm-hmm.
broken. I think was a word that came up when I was listening to you talk. It's just like, yeah, the family has broken up. Like that.
Mm-hmm.
That was something that I've just thought about a lot over the years. Like just that brokenness, and it's,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
taken time to feel like whole again.
Mm-hmm.
And it was
Yeah.
like, I didn't sign up for this. I didn't, when I got married, had kids, I didn't sign up for this whole breakup, this pain. And it wasn't just the pain that I was experiencing. It was painful to see the kids going through this as well. I remember, I remember after the breakup, the kids went away and they lived on the other side of the UK. So it was a whole thing was just a big ordeal. It wasn't like I could just jump in the
Mm-hmm.
car and I can be there in 23. It was like a 4 hour drive. And then I remember when the kids came over one weekend and, I was walking with the kids and they were quite young and they're like, oh yeah, we're living there and we see nanny and granddad. It's all fun. But at one point, when it wore off, I remember us walking with them, and my son said something that I was not expecting. And he just looked at me, and he was, he's about 6 years old. He looked at me and he says, "Dad, you know, don't you want us around?" And inside, I was breaking inside. And I just looked at him and I just kind of gulped, and I didn't know how to answer. And then he just asked again. He goes, "Do you not love us? Do you not want us?" I mean, how do you tell that to a 6 year old, to understand that? And I'm, there in pain, trying to get myself together. And then I've got two young boys, and I know now they're suffering, they're in pain, and they're saying, "Why is Dad away?" And that was a real tough moment, just knowing that he was saying, "Do you not want us? Do you not love us?" How do you deal with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Was your ex um, giving them positive messages about you, or no?
Yeah, I mean, luckily we were fortunate that we did give positive reinforcements and messages. And one of the things I said to my son was, I sat him down and I said to both the boys, and I said, "Look, you know how you were when you were in nursery, and when you were young, you used to watch all these programs, and you had you had friends." And I said, "When you move from nursery to a different nursery, the bigger nursery, how you change your friends, and you don't watch the same programs." And I said, "Look, this is what happens in life as well. Sometimes mums and dads, things will change. So what we knew in the past, we don't always we have. So the things that you watch when you were 2 years old, you don't watch them when you're 6 years old, because your taste changed." And that was the only way that I could explain what was going on. And he goes, "Oh, I see, Dad." I said, "The friends you had when you were two, sometimes you don't want to play with them anymore, because you want to play different things with different friends." I think he kind of like slowly was getting the understanding of the change. And I think that was a real thing that I had to keep drumming in. Change happens, change is part of life. But again, at 6 years old, 5 or 6 is pretty tough to take that in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's one of the things that probably a lot of nice guys, myself included, there's a lot of shame around being divorced, that came along with this idea of divorce. I was raised in a religious home. My parents, were like, divorce is a sin. We will never divorce. I think they were trying to give us a sense of stability, but it kind of increased this sort of amount of shame that I felt when I did get divorced. I have two brothers. They both been married to the same woman for the last, 20 plus years. And so I was the only one in my family getting divorced. And there was a lot of shame that kind of went along with just the idea of, I'm failing, I couldn't do it. I couldn't, whatever. And I know that's also something that some of my clients deal with as well. I'm wondering if you guys felt that at all.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, the stigma was enormous for me, but I didn't even realize it until I was about to get divorced, how much stigma I had attached to divorce. And like I I realized I didn't want to be like one of those people. Like like that was the thought process in my head. I'm not one of those people.
Hmm.
Like we aren't one of those people. Like I'm 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 married to another therapist. Like we are supposed to figure this stuff out. We
Yeah.
if we can't talk it through, then we're we're shitty. Um, so yeah, getting through that stigma was a big hurdle. And now I see divorce as like, oh, this interesting thing about me. Like I've got
Hmm.
experience that I can bring to another relationship and help other people with. It
Mm.
took me a while to get there.
When you talked about shame and embarrassment, that's something that really came up for me. I remember, you know, going to where my kids lived, and then standing waiting to pick them up. I'm standing there. I'm thinking, I hope nobody looks at me. I hope. Oh, I don't want anyone pointing the finger. Oh, this guy failed. What a failure. What a loser. He couldn't keep his family together. Now he's coming up. What embarrassing. He's coming up, picking up his kids. All I wanted to do was just like hide, pick up the kids, quickly take them to the car and go somewhere safe. You know, no one recognizes me. And again, in my culture as well, divorce is, shameful, embarrassing. How, you can't even keep the family together. How incompetent of you, how not worthy of a man. So I really really struggled with shame and embarrassment.
What are some of the things you guys maybe have done to become a better dad? I mean, what are some of the things maybe you've learned through this ordeal that could be helpful for other guys that are going through this at this moment?
I think that's just a good topic to go through, because first of all, recognizing that it's not gonna be easy. There are gonna be a lot of moments of pain, and there's gonna be a lot of suffering in those moments when you've struggled with, just the whole collapse, and you felt like you're lonely, you're abandoned, and you're home by yourself. And that was horrible, because the silence was like deafening, because I was used to like kids running around, the noise, and you're home by yourself. It was also a gift as well. It was a gift because I was very much a unconscious man, like a guy that was coasting life. I had no consciousness, no awareness. I didn't know anything much about psychology. I'm a tech nerd. That's what was my background. I fix solutions logically. There's a problem, I'd fix it. So what this gave me was a gift, and I didn't realize it. I didn't see it at the moment, but there were so many things in that. I remember a friend of mine. He kind of introduced me to psychology, and then I started just reading books after books, and I started attending seminars and courses and training. I am going to take this moment to be a better man and a better father. And I had never ever said anything like that. And that's what was my stepping stone. Is taking this moment to be a better man, to be a better father, because I've really failed here. Ari, what was your experience like? What was
Well, I was
like,
just identifying
epiphany?
with what you were saying that this is part of how you transform yourself from nice guy to enlightened guy or integrated man. Is you've got to use this loss and this big change as a gift, as a teacher. So, you know, that is something that you teach to your sons, and that's something that I'm using all of these things I've learned from the divorce to teach my son. Um, including just, how do you manage your emotions? How do you manage a lot of emotional pain? And I think there's a
Mm.
recognition that this is something for me to deal with, and that I do need to protect my son from that
Mhm.
pain. You can share little bits of it. You can model sharing emotions with your son, but it's up to you to do the healing on your own.
I have to say that is a real difficult thing to do. I don't know about you, Chuck, but I don't know how you guys, manage this, but modeling the emotions, because I know like, I speak to a lot of guys as well. At the beginning of that breakup, as a nice guy, you're modeling some of I think, the worst traits possible. I remember I'm like all over the place. I'm really emotional, snappy, annoyed, you know, impatient as well, frustrated, and then I'm trying to work out so many things. I'm like, there's too much on me. I just felt like there's a lot on me. There was a heaviness on me.
Right. You had lost your essential dadness,
Yeah,
as Chuck
I
says.
lost. Yeah, dad. Yeah, I lost that. That was it. It was really hard to. I remember when there was like moments of like joy and like, oh, okay, this is great. But then when the reality hits and there's like, actually, there's a lot of work to sort out. You're thinking, and I.
I think one of the things that, as nice guys, we tend to do is make the woman the center of our universe. And I think a similar kind of thing is when we're we sort of make the family the center of our universe. And just like everything else, it starts with you. Ari, you were talking about a gift, and I think that looking back, and I have no way to prove this, but it's made me a better man, father, and husband, having walked through that. That I don't know that I would have been had I not walked through that, because it really forced me to take a look at myself and where I was putting my values and where I was putting my time and energy. Dr. Glover talks about building a great cake of a life, and that the woman is the icing. So if the icing goes away, you still got this great cake. And I think that a lot of nice guys fail to do that because they're so busy trying to be a provider, to be a dad, that they fail to really um, make a great cake of their lives while they're married. And then when they get, blindsided by a divorce or whatever, they've got no one there to support them. And I think that's a critical thing that I learned was I need other men in my life for fun and having a good time and having banter and all that kind of stuff. And I always say it's like, 90% of the time we're just bullshitting around, but it's that 10% of the time, it's that 10% when the shit hits the fan that you
Yeah.
got to have your brothers around to be able to like help you, and love you enough to bring and support you to hold you up. So I think that's probably one of the
Yeah.
most important lessons I learned going through my divorce.
Yeah. Who's around you? That's such a good point. I mean, you find yourself really lonely thinking, actually, where
Mm,
is my support network? And then it's a realization, what have I built? Because everything
yeah.
was built so much on the family. Like the family was a central point, the relationship was a central point, and suddenly everything's there. There's a massive void, emptiness, and you're thinking, actually, where am I? Who am I? What am I? All
Hmm.
these existential questions started to,
Yeah.
come up, and it was,
That's exactly right. Yeah, I was just gonna say, one of the ways that I managed my emotions during the divorce, after my ex left, and so we had a year of separation, um, and I was in a lot of pain and having to figure out the financial side of divorce, um, while still supporting her, which felt like an injury in itself. Um, and then just trying to still manage my work life, to be a parent. It just felt overwhelming, and so I got on Tinder after a month, and that was one of the ways that I stayed up emotionally. I mean, that's a roller coaster in itself, and that was something that I had to learn how to manage over time. I mean, that is also a nice guy trap, I think,
Hmm.
is to just jump into dating or dating apps.
did you
Right.
guys use? Did you guys use anything else? I mean, like, uh, did you resort to say alcohol or drugs or anything like that? Did any of you guys do that just to manage your
Oh,
emotions?
yeah.
I was drinking more, but I'm not a huge drinker.
Yeah, I was drinking more. The way I dealt with it was a lot of denial. And so, the first woman to show me any amount of attention, I latched onto her. And then within like a few months after the divorce, my paper, I mean, the ink wasn't even wet on the divorce paper. And I jumped into another marriage. And that only lasted a couple of months before that imploded because it was I married her as a reaction to the divorce, which was I felt so unstable, and it was like the drowning man. I was just like latching on to whatever would save me, and the result of that was twice the amount of pain, not just for me but for her and for her kids and everybody else involved in that, and then carrying the shame of that on top of everything else, and that was In part because I was, was drinking a lot. I was I had prescription pills that I would use to kind of try to make kill the anxiety. I had so much anxiety and strife inside of me that I felt like I was just going to explode. And the only time I felt a little bit normal was either when I was drinking or when I was with her. Then I could kind of forget all of the other shit that was going on. I just wanted out of the pain. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
my solution brought me 3 times the amount of pain that, uh, you know, I would have probably avoided a lot of that had I, um, had built more support in my life before it all happened.
Exactly. I think that's some of the things that like as myself was going through my coping mechanisms. I resorted to alcohol as well. I thought this is the only way that's going to numb this. So
Mm-hmm.
I remember I would drop my kids and they would take me. So during the breakup, she had the car, she got the car, and my kids lived away hours away. So it'd take me 4 hours to go and pick them up, and then another 4 hours back. And I was on this long, huge journey. I would be doing like 20 hours a weekend. And on the way back, I would always stop off at the newsagents. I'd get some alcohol, and then I'll just sit and wallow and be in this victim energy and
Mm-hmm.
being like, oh, everything's done wrong to me. And I just got into, this, everything else is at fault. And I would just drink myself and I'd get home and then I'd drink some more. And then this is how I started to soothe myself. And there was a period I went for a few, I remember several months. And at some point, I remember asking myself, what's the point of all of this? I don't know if you guys did this, but I started to ask myself, what is the point? What's the point of me being here? And I started to ask the question, like, there is so much pain and agony, and all that's all I could see at a certain point at rock bottom. And I thought, well, if I'm in pain, I can see everybody else's pain. I was projecting my pain onto everything else. And I said, well, the most logical thing for me to do is not be here. And I just went. I remember going through this period, and I luckily had my sister around who was is a freaking rock, amazing support. And I had a couple of other friends, but I was like just like a typical nice guy. I didn't really want to speak to a lot of guys or get a lot of help. I was quite still embarrassed about it. I was still licking my wounds on that one. But it was at some point I remember actually, no, they need me more here. I'd be more useful here than I'd be absent. So that was one of the
Yeah,
coping mechanisms.
yeah. I didn't know about that for you, and that it got to the point of having suicidal thoughts or thoughts of not wanting to be here. I didn't. I mean, I had those when I was in my 20s, which was a difficult time. But I think having my son, I think I was telling you guys earlier that was my North Star. And I
Yeah.
always wanted to do right by him. And I would recommend that as a coping approach for men,
Mm-hmm.
even. You know, it doesn't mean you're living for your child either, but it does give your life a lot of meaning.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
had a similar kind of thing. Felt the same kind of things, and similar to you, Ari. It's like my daughter was probably the only reason. Well, my daughter and my cat. I had to take care of my cat. Feed my cat. So, those two things, just having them around, were the things that kind of kept me going when I wanted to just cash it in. Um,
Mhm.
you know,
Guys, the discussion's been really heavy, and I love the fact that we shared some deep stuff, and I'm sure this is going to resonate with some other guys going through breakup, divorce, when they've got kids, as family. It's not easy. I know that. Look, we're here. We're happy to support. You can reach out, any of us guys. If you go to niceguyshow.com, again, there are so many places you can go to get help. There's a lot of free help. All you have to do is don't be a nice guy about it and not
right.
take the help. Take the help. This is the most important advice I'll give you: is there are so many men willing to help you. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to do part 2 of this. Part 2 is, understanding that, we want to be great dads. So how can we thrive being a great dad? Now, if you're going right through this, you might not feel like, oh, there is light in the tunnel, but I promise you, all of these guys, we've gone through it. There's light in the tunnel. So let's not be bitter about this. Let's be better about this and thrive as dads. See you in the next podcast.
You've been listening to The Nice Guy Show, the podcast that helps nice guys move past their insecurities and fears into the fullness of their masculine strength and confidence. Be sure to like and subscribe to our podcast and check out the website niceguyshow.com for more information on how to connect with Chuck and Faisal. Until next time, keep living your best life.